You have a friend on this podcast once in a while. He's kind of reclusive, actually. But then you realize that everybody loves Tom Jones, and when he comes on, they get fan mail about this guy. Should I feel a little insecure at this point? I mean, I know he was with the podcast. We did a radio show together. You hired both of us, but like, Steve, I don't know. I mean, I think they like him better than me sometimes. I don't.
Well, I mean, even though he's spring-loaded for negativity,
yeah,
the Tom Jones love is there.
It's undeniable. It's undeniable, and we were getting mail about him. I didn't expect mail at this stage. What were some of the letters they wrote about him? They were.
I know. Avid listener to your shows for 5 years. Missed the give and take you two have.
Yeah.
You just sent me one. I haven't even read this one yet. You just sent me one right as we were starting.
Yeah, I got a couple. It was the same kind of theme. Like,
really enjoyed the last 2 days with Tom and you. You both have a comfortable but yet edgy conversation. Edgy conversation. That may be how we describe the show from now. Edgy conversation.
You're on the edge. It's the edge.
Yeah. Conversation is insightful and feels natural. You're like oil and vinegar. Go well together, but you have to mix it up.
Wow. Wow. The old oil and vinegar. I wonder which one I am. I would probably say oil more than vinegar.
I remember one of your radio shows heading to work one morning, and Jones explains his view with, "Hey, I'm the kid who ran with a pencil, literally. So you can tell him, but he still has to find out on his own."
Yeah. No, that's him. And he did run with it. And I if I misspeak, I'm sorry about this, Dickie V. Dickie V, he was the guy that ran with the pencil and got it stuck in his eye, I think. Seriously.
Yeah. Actually, he had that happen.
Right. So when your mom always says, don't run with that, you might poke your eye out. It has happened. No, it was great having Tom for 2 days. The second one, you had to edit it. I'm sorry. It went a little long. In fact, it went way too long. We started talking about, I don't know, Chief and, sport and all these things. What you could call people when it's
nice that the national shows are stealing your content.
Yeah, they are. Of course, 10 years later, I don't think we really had much of a copyright on that stuff. But so that was fun. And then we got into a lot of other stuff. No, it's great having Tom. I know he's a busy man. He has his own podcast. I'm not going to plug it.
It only took us like a month to track him down to get him on the show.
I know. He's that rare guest, man.
He's big timing us.
Yeah, he big times you, and
must have been hanging out with Katie Couric.
Probably, or
Steve
even
Kornacki.
more famous. Yeah, more famous than that, perhaps. Yeah, he's gone Hollywood. He's gone pure Hollywood. It's like when Carson would have Sinatra on. You know what I mean? Like it was like you had to watch. And people, if you're 100 years old, you remember Johnny Carson. But like, there would be this like mega celebrity. He'd do once a year appearance. You had to watch, and that's kind of what Tom's become. No, but it was fun. We talked a lot of sports and other things, and yeah. So we did all of that. We've got your mailbag questions to answer today. Some next week as well. But
you know what's 1 week from today though?
Opening day of Major League Baseball.
Opening day, yeah, and the Rays have someone on the IL.
That's right, they do. I tell you, these Rays. Sometimes you can just be around them and become injured. It's not even that you're necessarily on the 40-man.
Mm-hmm. Well, this one's not an arm injury, at least.
No, I know. No, it's our own Marc Topkin, the Top Cat, Topper, has taken a misstep, I guess, down there in Port Charlotte at some point. And if I read this right, broke his kneecap, fractured a kneecap. Sounds awful.
I was going to say, that sounds painful.
Yeah, it's not. Knock on wood here, and I'm doing that. I'm sure there's bones in my body that are broken I'm unaware of, but I've never actually been diagnosed with one. My son broke his leg. That was pretty serious when it happened when he was younger, about 7 years old. But I don't want to break anything. And if I did break something, I don't want my kneecap to be that thing. It sounds probably how it feels, right?
Well, I mean, in what mob movies and everything else, that's what they go for. That means it can't feel good.
Well, that's the thing.
Kneecap.
I mean, last time when you hear about people breaking kneecaps, I mean, I'm trying to start a Pete Rose thing or anything, but like, come on. But no, he fell, and I guess he had to have some I would assume some surgery there, or at minimum, they've casted it up, and so I guess he'll be around but unable to drive for something like 6 weeks. So, Mark, healing vibes to you, man. I sent him a note and saw how he was doing and whatnot. What was it? Was it last year? Maybe a little bit before that. He had the Achilles thing. I mean, if you're going to
That's
cover
right.
the
Yeah.
Rays, you're going to be like the Rays, right? After
Well,
a while,
yeah. I mean, it's that osmosis thing. You just
Tommy
kind of around it.
John
Yeah.
is next. But yeah, it's been been a rough spring for the beat writers down there in Port Charlotte. So hope he gets better. The Rays aren't that far away. It's hard to believe that opening day is just around the corner. What is it, next Monday?
It's going to be Friday, a week from
Friday,
today.
next Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, a week
Yep.
from today.
It's going to be fascinating how they transform Steinbrenner Field and what they have like 120 hours.
They've started actually a little bit,
Okay.
not so much putting up the new stuff, but I drove by there. Whenever Lamonte David talked on Monday, I guess, and they had begun in center field, facing outward towards the street, towards MLK
Okay.
and
Yep.
Del Mabry. They took down some signage that was
Mhm.
Yankee signage. I assume they're going to put up some Rays signage right there.
Yep.
So it's begun to transform, but not quite just yet.
But yeah, once the Yankees have their final spring training game, I don't know if that's Sunday or it's probably sometime this weekend, maybe Monday, but it's going to be a quick transfer. Initially, Rays opening day was supposed to be Thursday next week.
Oh, really?
They pushed it back a day because to give
For
them
the stadium?
an extra 24 hours to transform once the Yankees were done with spring training.
Got it. It's the Colorado Rockies, right? They're coming to town?
Correct. Rockies and Pirates in that first series.
Rockies,
two National
Pirates.
League teams. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, and of course, I think it was just about a year ago the Rays opened their season in Colorado. I was there.
Yeah, so the Rays almost always open at home. A couple years ago they didn't. That was when there was the lockout strike, whatever, and then the season got delayed by a week. Remember during spring training they shortened it and all that. So they started on the road that year, but they almost always start at home. This is a year you wish they started on the road.
Why is that?
Because you would have had more time to transform that stadium.
Oh yeah, if they had a little more time. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, but it didn't become feasible.
Right. Well, and they want them. Obviously, the weather is a big factor. It's beautiful down here right now. This is some of the best weather we ever have. The Valspar, being in town, it's going to be a great weekend at the golf tournament, and so I mean, they want to get them outside early in the spring or summer, I guess you'd say.
Yep.
And and then of course we know that it flips, and when it gets really really warm down here, they're going to spend a lot of time on the road. That uneven schedule is going to be really difficult, I think, because it wears on your road trips anyway. And sometimes they'll go on these 3-team 10-day deals, but to have that many kind of backloaded, it's not a balanced schedule like you'd hope for. It's going to put a lot of pressure on them to have to win and win early and win at home. Their home record is going to have to be pretty phenomenal, and maybe it will be. Maybe this will turn out to be the kind of park they need with some left-handed bats coming back, whether it's Josh Lowe or Brandon Lau or some guys that can hit the ball, especially the left-handers. But they're going to have to pitch well, and they're going to have to get off to a fast start. There's just no way around it. I don't think you're going to get where you need to be if we don't see them, I don't know, 8, 7, 8, 9 games above 500 at the All-Star break. I mean, it could really turn around.
Yeah, it's going to be – you're going to want a fast start. And you just don't know. I heard Joe Madden on with on Tom Kresnicki's show the other day.
Yeah.
And, I know we've all said the outdoor is going to be fun. It's going to be great, and it is. But he brought up a good point. He mentioned that the Florida Marlins won 2 world championships playing in the heat and the rain delays and that at Joe Robbie Stadium outdoors. He goes, that's impressive. Like, he couldn't say enough about how hard that is dealing with, how many rain delays do you have? How hot is it? How, the tarp on, the tarp off, it happens all the time there. Like, he goes, that's impressive that they were able to win 2 world championships, early in their franchise history dealing with that.
Outdoors,
I remember
is.
Working series down there that were just miserable in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, it really is impressive when you look back on it. They did it with a number of free agents and things like that. So they spent some money for those championships. But yeah,
Oh yeah, and they had great talent too. Don't
having
get
to
me wrong,
dodge
but
thunderstorms and rain delays and the heat especially. You think it's hot here? It's very warm in South Florida. So
I remember working a 4-game series in Miami. This is back in 05.
yeah,
It was a 4-game series. There was 5 rain delays. I believe
5.
it was over 8 hours of rain delays
Oh my God.
in the 4-game series, or 7, 8, something in that range. But there was 5 different rain delays in 4 games, and by the end, everyone just hated each other.
They're just done. Yeah.
Yeah, So,
But I gotta be honest with you though. Like we'll be focused on that because we know what it's like down here in Florida at 4:00 in the summertime, right?
mm-hmm.
But I found myself in Baltimore. This is years ago, and I was filling in for Mark, and I did a series in Baltimore in the summertime. Couple quick observations. It was hot as I've ever been.
Yes.
It was, steamy, hot, humid, hot, and talk about rain, brother. We had rain delays, and I'm not talking just a little bit. Like I'm hours of rain delays. Didn't start the game. On Saturday, long rain delay in the middle of the game at night. Like you could see it coming right around the first pitch.
Yep.
And they basically kind of wait and say, well, let's not start the game because it's here. And the whole time I was there, you just kind of it was inconvenient. It was like every game was like this, and it was like, well, that's summer in the Baltimore D.C. area.
Yep. It happens everywhere across the Midwest and Northeast.
Yeah,
it just doesn't last
hot.
nearly as long as down here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That part of the season's about a month long, not 3.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
But to be honest, it gets hotter there than it does in Tampa.
Well, and because we have the sea breeze, right? We have that.
Yep.
The water coming or the air coming off the Gulf of Mexico, which is cooled by the Gulf, and you get that. I mean, we've talked about this. I know me growing up in Florida, in St. Petersburg, at the time of the covered wagon, when my family got here. And people will know this if in the old timers that listen to this podcast, but you'll know that, and even some that don't. If you live in St. Petersburg or even probably Tampa in some places, I can only speak for St. Pete because that's where I grew up. But these houses did not have air conditioning; they just didn't. If you had a neighbor that had a room air conditioner, a wall unit, you know how they'd stick out the window.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
brother, they were rich, right? Like you go, wait a minute, they got air, they got AC. What is? No, I don't want to go hang out there, man. And you would go over there, and it'd be like a fish that was on the sidewalk that just jumped back into the water. You're like, I can breathe. So when we moved in, when I was just a toddler, the way they built these houses is they had these things called Miami windows, and they would open in sections, right? It wasn't just one big pane of glass. They would open like in sections. And then you would have terrazzo floors. And terrazzo, which is really a good looking floor if it's done right, is just sort of I don't even know what you would call it. There's stones in there, and it's like a very smooth, light surface that's cold to the touch. Like in the summertime, it would stay cool. And in the wintertime, it'd get downright freezing. But in the summertime, it stayed really, you could sit on it, walk on it. It was cool to the touch. And then, so you have the Miami windows in the front of the house. And in the back of the house, most of these houses had either some kind of a porch or what we called a Florida room, which was behind the dining room, sort of in the center of the house. Some people use it as a family room, but that also would have either screens and be open air like that, or it would also have those Florida sort of windows, as Miami windows or whatever, jalousie windows as they call them. And so every day it would get hot as hell. I mean, you'd be hot, there's no doubt about it, but you're walking around on cooler floors, and then the rains would come in the summertime, 4:00, 3:30, 4:00, and you'd get that burst right from the rain, the breeze that has those thunderstorms come off the Gulf or come off the east or whatever it is. And that wind would be forced through that house from the front to the back. And it would you just didn't even think about it. Like you just lived that way, right? You might have a floor fan that would be going. A lot of people had floor fans to keep the air circulating in the home. I gotta be honest with you, like, nobody thought anything of it. You survived that way, and I'm sure it was hella hot back then as it is now. But that's how people lived. And of course, now we're all soft. We all have central air and heat and all that stuff. Even my parents' house got retrofitted for that. Thank God. Um, but yeah, I grew, like I said, we talked about this the other day. I grew up and played baseball my whole life. And do I remember rainouts? Yeah, I do. Do I remember rain delays? Absolutely. But I mostly remember playing. You know what I mean? Now,
Mm-hmm.
for the people that had to sit through them, when we'd sit in our cars, or the people that, the families that came to watch their sons play or whatever, that had to suck, right? But I was playing, so it didn't matter to me. And you'd have to wait for them to go out there with the dirt and spread it around and, try to soak up the water and rake it and all that stuff, sweep it with a broom up into the outfield. Like, it took effort, but looking back, it's not the rain delays or the heat that I remember. I remember some really hot days. So these guys will adjust. The fans are the ones that are going to find it uncomfortable, you know, in my opinion. And baseball has changed because now, and maybe teams are better equipped for this, but like, if I go out there and my guy isn't just an opener, but he's my starting pitcher, and we go 3 innings and then the rains come and he's down for more than 15 minutes or 20 or 30 or an hour, he ain't going back out. So you're going to have to account for that on the roster somehow, that they may use even more pitchers now because of these delays.
Well, I think that's why they've been stockpiling some arms this offseason, and that is
Yeah,
knowing that you may run into situations where your starter only went 2 innings because of rain and a delay,
that's right.
and
That's right.
an hour-long delay. You're not going to get them back up and warm them back up. So
Nope.
I think some of the roster moves over the off season, and particularly, we joke about every time they signed a pitcher, it was like, well, they got a hit. No, it's another pitcher. But it was done on purpose, knowing that they've only had to deal with really rain delays on the road, for years, and now they're going to have to deal with it possibly every game of the season. I mean,
That's right.
outside a couple places that are indoors, but there's a chance every game could be delayed in some sort.
The Durham shuttle is going to get worn out this year, man. They're going to have to get some arms up, and God forbid, hopefully this is the year. I'd like to see 1 year, just 1 year, and it's probably impossible these days. But where I don't know, say your top starters, that nobody ends up on the IL for any length of time. You know what I mean? That if you could get through a season where there's not a Tommy John, or a guy that misses a ton of time with an oblique or some damn thing. But if you could keep your 5 starters, in this case the Rays have 6, your bullpen relatively intact with Fairbanks and those guys, that would be impressive to see what they could do, right? What those guys could do if they were out there. They got the ball every 4 or 5 days. Like, that's what you really want. But that's not baseball in this day and age, and that's why I think the Rays have done a good job relative to other teams in stockpiling their farm system with guys that can come up and pitch well, and like right now, and find guys off other rosters that may not be all that, but they get them in here. They you know get with Snyder, and the next thing you know, they're out there throwing shutout innings. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting. Of course, they've already started. Major League Baseball started in Japan this week.
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani going yard in Japan. Who would have
There you
guessed?
go. Yeah,
But actually, that was a huge series there. I mean, the fans there were awesome and impressive. And Dodgers are 2-0. I think their magic number is 161.
Can we just write them in the World Series? I mean, is there any team that's going to be better than them? Seriously,
I
I mean,
mean, barring a bunch of injuries, it shouldn't be.
they spent the most money. It's an all-star team practically, and Shohei is the greatest player of my generation right now. It seems. Is he going to pitch this year? By the way,
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't really followed him.
I
This
think he's going to
offseason,
be
but
able to. I don't know
yeah,
what the plan is like going forward, but I think his arm will be at least
I
sturdy
often
enough.
said Barry Bonds was the greatest player I ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably Shohei.
Do you? Just for the
I mean,
power, speed.
he's such a great hitter, and then
Yeah,
you can pitch
exactly
like
right.
that. Like, come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, Babe Ruth of our time, right? And then some.
Yeah, I mean, Babe Ruth was so dominant as a hitter back then, as far as power.
Right.
I don't know if Shohei's as dominant as him because there's a lot of home runs being hit, but
I'm pretty sure Babe Ruth wasn't throwing
But-
100 miles an hour either.
no. Although I don't know if anybody did back then. I doubt it.
I doubt it, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
yeah. No, he's incredible, and did he help them win a World Series last year? Was it a good move to LA? Yes, and he got paid.
Mhm.
So no loss there. The whole thing, he was in kind of the Los Angeles area, just playing for the wrong team. So I'll keep coming back to this. How is it that the Angels had Shohei and Mike Trout for the length of time they did and didn't sniff the postseason?
I mean, I think Mike made it early in his career once,
He did, yeah.
but together they had them and did nothing.
It's crazy, right? At the time they had them, maybe the first and second best or top 5 top players in baseball.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get there. So we had a little quarterback news going on in the NFL. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, speaking of the NFL, get on down to Breitling Boutique in International Plaza Mall. The Breitling, of course, they've been making Swiss watches in that company for, I don't know, 140 something years. They've been in International Plaza now for 5+ years. And what they've been doing really since before Christmas is celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary. They have 32 team watches, limited edition. I don't know which ones, if you root for the Packers or the Bears or the Miami Dolphins or the Bucks, I don't know how many are left, but you have to see these things. They're absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful chronomat watches that they're known for. These beautiful men's watches. They have the team colors as the face of the watch itself. Logos on there. It is. You can go to tampabay.com. You'll probably see one on our website. Of the Buccaneers watch, which is terrific. But more than that, I mean, if you go to Breitling Boutique, it's just a nice store with terrific customer service. I mean, they're used to dealing with celebrities and professional athletes. You're gonna see most likely a Buccaneer or two come through there if you go there enough. But just take in the store and its atmosphere, have a drink. They're going to explain to you about all the product and watches they have, not just for men, but also for women. If your wife or girlfriend is looking for a beautiful sports watch, they have them. They're durable. They're absolutely gorgeous, and they have all different kinds and colors of wristbands to go with those. It's Breitling Boutique. We've been talking about them now for months and months. They're a great sponsor of ours. I'm telling you, these are special watches from a special watchmaker. Go to Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall, and when you do, let them know that you heard about them on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, so you're the big Michiganer, the big Michigan fan, and your quarterback, it seems, JJ McCarthy, who was on the IL last year. Of course, we saw what Sam Darnold did with the Vikings. There had been talk about maybe Aaron Rodgers, right? Maybe they get a bridge guy to JJ who missed all of last year. No, they made the decision. McCarthy is going to be their guy, and we know they have a talented as hell offense, and we also know they have a really good coach in McConnell. So what do you think of the move? Because this is a team that won, 13, 14 games a year ago. They didn't get very deep in the postseason, but they're ready to win right now. Is McCarthy, and you watched him, he haven't played in a year. He won a national championship, then got drafted, then got injured. Is McCarthy the type of guy with a great veteran team around him that can keep them at that level, at that elite NFC level?
I think the Vikings are a perfect situation for him. You've got a running back in Aaron Jones. You've got receivers. You've got a creative offensive coach. JJ's a very good quarterback. In college, he was, but I don't know if he was elite in college. He had a great running game, a great defense.
Wasn't asked to do as much, in fairness, because Jim Harbaugh was going to ground and pound that ball.
Right. I mean, he's definitely willing to do whatever it takes to win because he was in the Heisman Trophy race and then handed the ball off 32 straight times to win at Penn State.
That's right.
And
that's
fell out of the Heisman
though,
race
man.
at that
That's
point.
selfless.
Well, that's what I mean. He's a team guy. He's a leader. He's well liked. Probably, he's one of the big reasons Michigan turned it around. I mean, it started with Aiden Hutchinson in that senior class of that.
Right.
But JJ was a freshman at that point and had that moxie, swag, whatever you want to call it. But he's a well-liked teammate. He can make the throws. I don't know if he can make them in NFL windows. And that's
That's
what we're going to find out.
That's a great point, and that's the one thing. Like when I was watching him play in the national championship year, and maybe even in that game, I can't remember, but I was just kind of watching the throws. And I mean, we all know what throws you have to make in the NFL. I think he can make them, right? He has plenty of club, as they say, and he's athletic, and he will run the ball. He'll do anything to win. He'll put his body on the line. We've seen this. So great competitor, great leader, all that stuff. But I saw some meaty U throws, as I call them, right? Where it's just like guys in the flat, or a guy runs a dig, or the guy runs, a stick route or something like the sideline, and he's open, right? And the ball's thrown in a position, and this is especially true in college football where you can't just get back up and run again. But there were places in his game where I thought, better throw there. The guy doesn't have to go down on the ground to catch it. He's still running. And some simpler, some basic throws, that just didn't seem quite as accurate. And you made the point that maybe they were coming out a little bit late too.
Everything just seemed a tad behind, or
Just off,
not in
right?
front. Like it
Yeah.
would hit the back shoulders you're running across the field instead of in
Right.
front of you.
Right. Right.
Like
And,
it was just his whole career at Michigan. He was that way. It was made good decisions, got the ball there,
right.
but it wasn't perfect.
Right. Right. Could have been better. And in the NFL, open is not what open is in college. When you're open in college, usually wide ass open. In the NFL, it might be the length of a hand. But those guys in the National Football League, if you throw it inside and it's supposed to be outside, that's a pick. That ball is going the other way. They're going to come run right through that receiver and take the ball with them. Like the ball placement in the NFL has to be really precise. And I want to see him do it. He's got to prove to me whether it's, he's holding it too long, or maybe he's just not as accurate on every throw that he needs to be. It's one of the things, and I'm not dumping on Kyle Trask here, although it's going to sound like I am, because poor Kyle has only thrown 11 passes in the NFL. Okay. Not his fault. He played behind Brady and now Baker Mayfield. But when I watch Kyle, especially early in his career, in the NFL, not college, but the NFL, because open in college is wide ass open. But in the NFL, it's a little tighter. But when I watched Kyle, I didn't see him complete enough volume of passes. And when he did, it was some sort of what we're talking about, where the ball wasn't exactly in the best place. I've seen him airmail it, in the flat over guys' heads. And I think he's gotten better because he worked on his feet. He's really worked hard to become a better player. We just haven't had a chance to see him yet. But Trask had a little bit. Trask was a very good college football player. Outstanding college football. He's a second round draft pick. So yeah, it's a transition. It's going to be how fast he can process things. He has a great head coach and offensive mind in Kevin O'Connell, but and the Vikings they're ready to win now. They proved it with Sam Darnold last year, and in many games as they won. Do you take a step back and risk maybe not making the playoffs? I think their supporting cast is good enough that if he just plays winning football, distributes the ball, he doesn't have to do everything. And to your point, he's made it clear that he'll do anything. It doesn't have to be about him. He's willing to to take the back seat if somebody else has to drive the car. So, but it's interesting, right? And so that's it for Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota. Where does he go now? Because I think the only two teams of consequence, anyway, that you would think he'd consider playing for is either Pittsburgh or the Giants. And those are two diametrically different situations.
Very much so.
I mean, God. I heard the guy the other day. They interviewed somebody. I wish I knew the player's name from the Steelers and asked him about Aaron Rodgers. And he goes, "I don't care about his going in the darkness."
It was Cam Hayward.
Was it Cam Hayward? Yeah,
Yep.
And he was saying, all I want to know is, do you want to play for us or not? Are you going to be a Steeler or not? Like, that's a good point that was being made. Is that if you come in there as a quarterback, it's not about you, right? It's wherever else where Aaron Rodgers goes, is going to be, Aaron Rodgers is with the Jets, or Aaron Rodgers is in Pittsburgh. You're just a Steeler. That thing's been going for a long time now, and it'll go a long time after Aaron Rodgers is done playing. They don't need a celebrity quarterback. They don't need, a guy that's going to, go on McAfee every day and, talk about what's going on in the locker room and that sort of thing. They just want a guy that can come in and help them win because they're the Pittsburgh damn Steelers, and you got to be grateful just to get a chance to put on that uniform. That's how they feel. I don't know how the Giants feel. I think the Giants obviously have a coach and GM situation where they have to salvage something after the Saquon Barkley trade and them flaming out. Like, this will probably be the last chance for both of those guys. But I don't think the Giants are a great winning situation if you're Aaron Rodgers. So what does he do?
Retire.
It's probably probably the best option right there. Probably is.
Go play in the UFL this spring.
Yeah, I don't know, man. People are still, apparently there's Atlanta's still getting calls on Kirk Cousins, which is interesting. They just paid him a ton of money to keep him on the roster.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you? If you have a quarterback need and you think he's the best option,
right?
Keep calling.
Tennessee has to make a decision about what they're going to do. Does the first overall pick, is that going to be a quarterback or another position?
Sure seems like it's leaning towards Cam Ward.
I think Cam Ward probably will be the first pick, no matter who takes him. I think, whether they trade out, whatever happens. I think, again, the value of the position, he's I think the best of this class. What's interesting, we just talked about McCarthy. People have said that if he were coming out this year, he'd have been the first quarterback. That's kind of an indictment a little bit on who's, what they think is Shedeur Sanders and others. But it's also saying something about McCarthy too, that he might have been the first quarterback off the board if he was coming out this year.
Yeah, I mean, Sanders and Ward. I mean, next year is supposed to be a much better class. Last year was a good class.
Right.
When they said going into the draft, this one, it's kind of why Quinn Ewers came out.
Right.
That there's not a lot of quarterbacks in this draft.
Right.
So you probably have a better shot at getting drafted higher this year. And he was leaving Texas anyway because they were handing it over to Arch.
Right. Arch Manning, yeah. Yeah, I think some guys will be drafted higher than they should be, just, again, the value of the position. But I don't – it doesn't look like it's a can't miss, Jaden Daniels type draft, right? Like,
exactly.
where you knew guys were going to be great. Usually it's about 50% anyway, but in this case, I think it might be a harder kind of sell.
Speaking of quarterbacks, we'll get to this one mailbag question.
Yeah.
We'll get to more on Monday. But
sure.
Peter had tweeted us. Says, how not in demand is Jameis in a quarterback-starved league and still no one wants him? That's a rough look. Any podcast tips for him?
He should give them to me, because apparently when he went to the NFL or to the Super Bowl and was working for, I guess it was Fox
yes.
for a while, and going around and media day and asking questions. And, Jameis is about as charismatic as anybody you ever want to be around. He clearly is going to have a very long career in broadcasting if he wants it. I don't know if he's going to do the podcast thing. I don't know if he's going to do the studio thing, or if he's going to do the color analyst thing. But if Jameis, with that big smile and that personality that's as big as it can be, if he wants to do it, he can make a lot of money. He's already made a lot of money, but he could do that and stay in football for a long time. I think with Jameis is. I don't think Jameis is looked as a starter anymore, first and foremost, because he hasn't been for some time. He'll tell you he's one of 32, but the math just doesn't work, because there's literally 32 other starters, and he hasn't been one for a while. I think he still has the skills in terms of the arm strength, and he's seen a lot. He's been in a lot of different systems. But when he's been called upon, he hasn't won a ton of games, I think he won one last year and then got beat a couple times in relief. And so I think he has to accept his fate at this point, that the best he can do is maybe be a bridge quarterback for a young star, or somebody, and I'm thinking about the New York Giants, because it almost makes sense, right? That they don't have anyone to speak of, and they may draft a guy somewhere fairly early. And Jameis, but at that point, your coach and your GM are essentially saying, well, this will be our last year, but we're going to go down with the ship, because we know it's the right thing to do for the organization. Maybe the Merrill family will insist upon it, but Brian Daboll, it's not going to help him if Jameis is the quarterback. You just can't. When you watch him play, and people have said he's the most exciting quarterback in the league. Well, yeah, they say that because he can either be special good or just special awful, and sometimes you'll get it on the same series. And we saw that last year where I had a really good game, and then he plays again, and throws 3 or 4 picks, and it's like, yeah, but it was exciting. He kept gunning the ball there. Yeah, I know. Well, we watched 5 years of it here in Tampa, and I don't think somebody may scratch that itch with him, but I don't think you're going to get winning football in a consistent manner, right? Like, and some of it, he hasn't been on great teams, granted, but he was on a team that went to the Super Bowl the year after he left, so they weren't bad. But yeah, now he's just a cheaper option. I don't think we've gotten there yet until they exhaust the Kirk Cousins trade possibilities, until Aaron Rodgers makes a decision if in fact he's going to play. But I think that Jameis is that next layer of, okay, well, what if we do this, right? We bring in a guy, he's played before, he's got some pedigree. We could start him in the season to start the year until our young guy that we're going to draft is up to speed and we feel confident he can take over. That's where Jameis lives now. And so, yeah, but he's also not a new player. I mean, this guy's played 8 or 9 years already. He's had a long career, and most quarterbacks don't have. So however he's done it, he's done very, very well for himself, and should be proud of that. But never obviously fulfilled the promise of a number 1 overall pick, much less a guy that won a national championship at Florida State. Thanks for that question. Hey, we got a busy week in sports, busy weekend, especially locally. The Valspar's in town. That's always great. Great field at the Valspar. See Ronnie Barber everywhere as the ambassador of that thing. And Jordan Spieth is going to play as well. But some good golfers. Great weather for that. It's one of my favorite things to do. I won't be able to get out there this weekend, but if you are in town and you can get there, it's a fun tournament. I hear the course looks absolutely stunning, so that's going to be fun. The Lightning have back-to-back games at Utah and at Las Vegas, so they're kind of on their little mountain western swing, as I will be.
Yep.
And
last weekend of spring training in here.
That's it.
Because opening day is a week from today, so
it's incredible, man. I'm looking forward to it. I really am going to dig what it looks like outdoor baseball in Tampa. A new stadium, shorter right field, really good pitching staff. How fast can these guys start, right? How fast can they get off and start to get some distance as far as above 500 goes? Or are they going to kind of linger like they did? I don't know how many times they were in 500 last year, probably 30, 40 times where they hit that magic mark. But yeah, I think it's going to be a special year for them in that regard. And of course, the off-field stuff is still crazy. You got ownership groups coming out the woodwork, and all kinds of decisions that have to be made there. But as far as finally we can talk about baseball and have a chance to watch the race, and then USF's women they're going dancing in the NCAA this weekend. They play Tennessee
tonight,
Vols.
8:00 tonight. So
how about that?
Yeah, they made the tournament first time in a few years.
It's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, they're in Columbus, and if they win tonight, they'll most likely have to play Ohio State on Sunday.
Yeah, pretty tough draw to get Tennessee, but you're just happy you make the tournament. It's a big honor and a big opportunity, and teams they might not want to play USF. We'll see what kind of fight they have in the postseason, but it's always fun to see them going at it. So, hey, get down to International Plaza Mall as well and see our friends at Breitling Boutique. They make the best Swiss watches in the world. They've been at it for 140 something years. They got the beautiful NFL collection of team watches, 32 special team watches, limited supply while they last. It's Breitling Boutique, middle of the mall there at International Plaza. And when you go in, make sure you tell them that you heard about all of this on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud, Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.